Hello everybody and welcome back once again to Let's Play Suzerain. Right, you'll have to excuse me, the last session was a little while ago that I recorded, of course. It won't be a while ago for you guys if all goes to plan, because you'll be seeing this pretty much every day, quite regularly, or near enough every day, quite regularly. But for me, yes, I've had some health concerns which has led me to not record for about a week or so, so kind of vaguely remember where we left off. It was a discussion with the Chief Justice. I think that was the session, right? Anyway, I seem to recall that we ended where we were going to talk with our ministers for health and education. Yeah, they're not getting much money. But anyway, we start with the news. It's an interesting day to be recording this, because today is the 4th of July that I'm recording this. Don't know when it'll go live, but today is the great election day for the UK. Big election. I say big election, it's just an election, isn't it, really? And it's already one of those elections where you kind of know the outcome. You know, if you're a betting man, there's no point putting money on it because you're not going to get much back. Unless something extremely shocking happens, which you just never know, can you? You can't account for people. But it's nailed on, really. But, yeah, so because it's an election day, politics has... And it's been an election month, really. Great time to be playing this game. Political simulator and all that. Right, anyway, let's crack on. The Hall Sword Post. Protests appear calmer. So although the protests do indeed persist, there is a slight reprieve across some cities. I don't know if we have seen these or not, if I ended with these on the last session. Privatisation to education has proven to be successful, which is interesting, but we are very much obviously a planned economy trying to keep things in-house where we can, so privatisation isn't the key. It's kind of interesting for private and health sectors because you can privatise one or both of them, so that gives you a cash boost in those sectors if you want to cut their budgets as a kind of a offset, which is interesting, but we can't do that because we don't want to privatise. So, yeah. There you go, read at your leisure. And in the Radical, Saul is... I definitely think we've seen these. Yeah, I think we've seen these. I think I ended by reading these. Report on the reforms. Yes, of course, we're not interested. They're going to get a horrible surprise soon. And the young sword suspected a terror attack. Yeah, what? The young swords? Clearly not. Yes, we did see those last time. Right, anyway, here we go. Briefing on the current welfare situation in Narbel. Here we go. I arrived at the meeting room for my talk with Chiara and Pascal. Before beginning, I took a moment to appreciate the view from the balcony. The mountains of Narbel were completely covered with snow. I'm going to warn you folks. Today I've got back pain. I don't normally suffer with back pain, but because of my health conditions that I've been suffering with for the past month, I've ended up in A&E a few times, twice in the past week, and I've sat in the most uncomfortable chairs with a limited backrest, and I'm tall, of course, no lumbar support, so I've exposed myself to that, and because I was really worried, I didn't really get up and move about. I was just kind of sat in a variety of non-DSE type postures, slumped, you know, slouched, hunched forward at times. Clearly over 20 hours, over a 3-day period, is not good for your back. And now, I'm in agony with my back. My upper spine, my lower spine, my muscles at the side of my back, my lower back going into my hips. Oh. So I went to the doctors today to finish up on the conversations that we've been having and to pull everything together that's happened for the past 4 weeks and look at next steps, which are looking, touch wood, not as grim as I had convinced myself they were going to be. As it looks, at least. Yeah. My closing remarks were, Doctor, I'm happy with all of that. I've got some further blood tests that I need doing because some markers in my liver were a bit high. Nothing to be concerned about, but just further tests just to make sure there's nothing underlying which could be causing that might have also caused some of the other stuff that's happening over the past 4 weeks. fine. I need my cholesterol doing because my cholesterol was high last year and I haven't had a follow-up cholesterol blood test done, so I need to have my cholesterol tested. You know, all the rest of it. My closing remarks were, doctor, back pain. I think it's because I've been sat in A&E for 20 hours on the most uncomfortable chair. She went, yeah, I would have probably come to the same conclusion. I said, and I'm normally not one for taking pain relief or anything. I'm not a big pain relief person. I can usually just press on with my symptoms. As long as I know they're not going to do anything bad to me and it's just a symptom thing, I'll cope. But given that for the past 4 weeks I've had a variety of issues, infections that's probably caused most of them, I've not had many days over the past month where I could tell you that I've woken up and gone to bed and had a lovely day without any symptoms, without any worries. So now that I've had some things ticked off my list that's not going to be a problem, and I'm happy with how things are moving forward, can I just have something a bit stronger than paracetamol for me back? Because I just want some relief from this back pain that I've brought on myself. Anyway, the reason why I got to this long story short business is codeine is what was prescribed, because I can't take ibuprofen because of my blood thinners. So I've got to be very careful with which pills I take. So she gave me codeine. Now, codeine can make you a bit drowsy, a bit relaxed. So I've taken one about 5 minutes before the session started. So towards the end of the session, if things start going a bit strange, this is why I got to this story, you'll know why. Just warning you in advance. Popped a codeine, 2 paracetamols, and I'm planning after this session to go and lie on my bed to give me back a breather and watch some of Clarkson's Farm, which I've started watching recently. And because loads of people love it, and I was like, I've got nothing better to do recently. I've been feeling a bit off playing any video games and stuff. Why not watch a bit of Clarkson's Farm, see what all the rage is about? And I tell you, it's good. It's really good. I'm on season 2 now, so after I've finished recording this, I'm going to go watch some more Clarkson's Farm in bed, or on bed, resting my back, and then a bit later I'll play some Fallout. But yeah, if you've not watched it and you've got Amazon Prime, Clarkson's Farm, I would highly recommend you give it a go. Right, there you go. I'll give you some flim-flam in a recorded session for a change. So there we go. We can get back now to playing the game properly and see what we're going to say to our Ministers of Health. Whilst on the balcony, admiring the mountains of Narbel, Pascal arrives. My Minister of Health was ironically somewhat portly, having gained a few pounds since his breakthrough as a best-selling writer, but his authority on social affairs could not be questioned. Such a spectacular view. Chiara Walder, the Minister of Education, joined us on the balcony, dressed in a sky blue pantsuit. Her preference for trousers over dresses had made her the subject of much palace gossip, but it didn't seem to bother her in the slightest. Spectacular indeed. But if you look in the opposite direction, you will see what Sol's decades of neglect did to the city. Most of the people living in Narbel are workers, farmers, and their wives and children. They're breaking their backs for close to no pay, all thanks to greedy corporations. Well, they can't really blame the companies, it's just how they work, isn't it? Yes, we can. Similar companies are doing much better for their workers in United Quintana and Arcasia. If you look past the view, you can see the real problems. Like poverty. Pascal nodded gravely. This was a subject he knew quite a bit about himself. His best-known books were about the plight of Swordland's less fortunate, drawing from his own past, growing up in squalor. Well put, Miss Walder. I don't need to tell you about my own experiences with poverty. I'm sure you have similar stories. Am I right, Mr. President? What, Mr. grew up in a wealthy background, Mr. President? No, actually. Thankfully, no, our family had never had any problems with money. Empathy much? Not a jot. You know the saying, you don't know what you have until it is taken from you. You don't have to have been born poor to sympathise with the plight of the impoverished, much as you don't have to have been born a woman to recognise Swordland's need for parity among the sexes. Parity among the sexes shouldn't be our first priority. Look at how many high-ranking female politicians our country has. Appearances can be deceiving, Pascal. Her voice sounded bitter. Think about how Lilius Graff got to her current position. I don't necessarily believe the rumours about her and Sol, but she could never have risen so high if she didn't parrot his calls. Gloria Tory? Is it an accident that the first female Assembly Speaker is such a staunch Conservative? And then there was Alfonso's habit of promoting women to prominent positions to give Swordland a progressive sheen, while accomplishing nothing in reality. While women in places like Narbel are denied any opportunity to advance, the government can use a handful of female politicians from wealthy families, myself included, to pretend their only obstacle to success is their own lack of initiative. Meanwhile, those of us who don't use our clout to help powerful men stay in power are denigrated as angry spinsters. I ask you, Mr. President, does anyone care that your strategist, Mr. Gallard, doesn't have a wife? I've been wondering about that, actually. All right, Kiara, you've made your point. As I was saying, isn't it about time Holsword addressed this country's real issues, rather than bowing to the wishes of the hawks and fearmongers in the establishment, and diverting yet more resources to the military and law enforcement? Our welfare, healthcare and education systems have been decaying since the recession. Swordland's poorer communities are losing hope. Hopelessness and a lack of opportunities can drive people to extreme solutions. We're seeing increased crime, domestic violence, and yes, rising inequality between men and women. Bloody hell, she's giving us a right lecture, isn't she? Well, Miss Wilder, I must say that capital must be prioritised towards the resources that matter the most. Swordland needs more schools full of children instead of barracks full of soldiers, more hospitals instead of police stations. It is obvious that the military has been overfunded for a long time. Perhaps it is time to change this trend. There is another subject I want to mention. I have been working on improving the rights of workers in our country and have proposed a draft bill that is currently being reviewed by our party. Mr. Clavin has already backed me and given his support. Swordland has fallen behind most countries on this subject, and it is my responsibility to ensure this is not the case. Ah, I see. Well, there is always room for improvement. It's good to hear that you're pushing for it. We're kind of don't want to shoot him down in flames at the moment, but I don't think we'll be pushing this bill through, if you get my gist. I appreciate the kind words, Mr. President. I will not let you down. Yes, all that hard work for nothing. Never mind. It is also a matter of life and death. Every decade we hear of some horrific accident due to employees' disregard for their workers' safety. So, will you back the bill when it arrives on your desk, Mr. President? I would need to evaluate the contents when I've seen it in full, actually, including full costings, Mr. Bennywall. Understandable. You'll receive all the sections in an outline. It's getting a little cold out here. Shall we continue our discussion indoors? Oh, this is not the end of the meeting. President looking at his watch. Oh, I thought we were finished. Fine, let us go inside. The meeting room was already prepared for state business. Small gifts for each of us had been placed on the table by the municipality. We took our seats. Right, let's start with you, Pascal. Why don't we? As you wish, Mr. President. Swordland has a free healthcare system, except for a few private hospitals operating under it. Most of the populace receives adequate treatment. Health issues primarily appear in rural areas due to a lack of quality services. I am doing my best to ensure that citizens of all ages receive the best healthcare they can. I also personally want to solve our high infant and maternal mortality problem. How many doctors and nurses have we got? About 31,000 doctors, 73,000 nurses. A high number. What I think is, I don't want to be rude, but out of those numbers, how many are in urban and rural areas? Let's not interrupt, shall we? That's not a problem. The number of doctors per 10,000 citizens is far lower in rural areas compared to urban areas. In other words, rural citizens with medical emergencies have to wait an embarrassingly long time before they are treated. I don't need to hear anything else, thank you, Pascal. I've heard enough. I have been fully briefed on these situations, so let's cut to the highlights, shall we? And then we can all get to enjoying the view with something stiff in our hand. Liquid form, of course. Education. With pleasure. Swordist education is free, but we have a very outdated system that I want to reform. The other important issue is the lack of access to education in rural areas, especially for young girls. Your administration has the power to solve both problems. My highest priority is to get enough funding to be able to build schools in rural areas while I cleanse our educational system of its nationalistic indoctrination and sexist teachings. How many students and teachers do we have? There are about 5 million students, 3 million in primary, 1 million in secondary, and 1 million in tertiary education. There are 155,000 teachers. Swordland is full of young bright minds. Our country is indeed full of potential. I think there needs to be a change in what is being taught. We should help the children to ask questions and educate themselves. Right, thank you, Kiara. I can fill in the blanks from here. Right, is that everything? Kiara stood up and moved toward the window. She took a deep breath. Something on your mind? Look at this impoverished city. The streets full of potholes, the hospital barely functioning, the school half open. This is not just about Sol or even Alfonso failing. This decay in Swordland's forgotten regions has been going on for many decades due to structural corruption, which is fueled by capitalism. Let's not get into an ideological debate here. We need to focus on the issues at hand. One cannot be separated from the other, Mr. Rayne. The issues stem from the ideology. Kiara sat back down and sighed. One way or another, we need change in Swordland. Greed and unchecked capitalism will not magically provide for the people. Okay, Pascal, tell me what you're working towards. I personally want to improve the low quality of healthcare in the rural areas. So I created draft plans to increase the salary of doctors and to upgrade the equipment of the hospitals. Okay. I can do more with an increased budget, but additionally a privatisation plan to promote private investments in the healthcare system could allocate extra funds. But I thought access to healthcare in the rural areas was an issue. Access is an issue, but not as critical as improving the quality in these areas. The lack of experienced personnel and equipment causes poor treatment, resulting in many deaths. I do hope to create competition and increase the quality of healthcare with the privatisation effort. But you must realise that privatising our healthcare system would increase the price of treatment and make access worse for the average citizen. Besides, it wouldn't fit the planned economy President Rayne has decided to promote. Thank you, Kiara, for chipping in there. Whilst you're at it, tell me about your plans. My plans require an increase in the government budget. I aim to solve the problems we highlighted with the allocated money. By building schools in these less fortunate rural areas and through fundamental changes to the education system, I want to unlock the potential of all of our children, boys and girls alike. Good idea. Perhaps not with the cash you're asking for, though. Shock horror when she finds out what's going to happen. It is an investment in the future of Swordland. Imagine unlocking the full untapped potential of our youth, the knowledge and wealth they will generate. Wouldn't a promotion of private education help create additional funds? Yes, but at what cost? I'm not a supporter of the private sector in education. At the end of the day, they are focused on profit first. My expectation from our government is that we understand and focus on the needs of the people. Right, I appreciate your briefings and plans. Thank you very much for your time. We shall reconvene at the all-important budget meeting. It was a pleasure. See you at the meeting. I hope to see a change in direction. Did we cover all the necessary subjects? One more thing. I wish to raise my concerns about your scheduled meeting with the Gasom chairman and former president, Mr. Alfonso. By negotiating with Alfonso and his company, you have an opportunity to secure better labour conditions for blue-collar Gasom employees. This could be a triumph for all of Narbel. What is there to negotiate, Pascal? The standards for Gasom workers are already at rock bottom. President Rayne can and must demand better. Nevertheless, it is worth acknowledging the corporation's significant contribution to job creation in Narbel and other poverty-stricken regions. Persuading the chairman to make concessions might prove to be a formidable task. I'm sure we can find a solution that advances both the economy and the interests of labourers. Don't worry. That would be quite the impressive feat. You'd make headlines for it. This matter is close to my heart. I will personally be grateful if you are able to resolve the concerns raised by Katerina Horton and her fellow Labour representatives. It would be difficult to imagine a CEO like Alfonso giving benefits to workers without him personally gaining from it. I'm fine. I'm sure we can compromise. I'm sure we can. We supported Mr. Alfonso during his time as president on more than one occasion. I'm sure he owes us one. The middle way often sways perilously close to the status quo. We must ensure that any negotiations genuinely benefit the people and not just uphold the interests of corporate giants. Thank you for your input, Chiara, but I will stress to President Rayne how important it is that the door to dialogue remain open. Ideology should never get in the way of bringing about tangible, lasting change. Jesus wept. Are we going to harp on for much longer here? I am encouraged by the willingness of Mr. Manger and Mr. Alfonso to meet with me. It is a step forward, and I shall ensure that we get the right outcome. Place your trust in me. We shall keep you no longer. Thank you both for the discussions. I do hope we won't repeat the same mistakes again and again. Have a good day, Mr. President. The ministers left, and I prepared to leave for the other official business in the city. The Gasom meeting was just one of the many events I was scheduled to attend over the next few days. As I made my way out, the weather was noticeably cold, but it didn't keep a group of USB supporters from coming out to cheer us on the streets. By looking at the citizens' attire, it was easy to understand the current state of Narbel. Some people were wearing clothes a few sizes too large. Some kids did not even have shoes. Yet there was hope in their eyes. They were excited to see their president in their city. Like a celebrity. Right, briefings. Young Swords member found decapitated in an abandoned house. A high school teacher, a member of the Young Swords Cultural Centre, Kirk Lenker. Torture, tongue cut off. That's quite extreme, isn't it? In Morbel, a mine disaster. These things happen, isn't it? You can't help these things sometimes. Something to do with health and safety legislation, what do you mean? It's just one of those things. The repeal of the Energy Protection Act has failed in the Assembly. Oh dear. Well, if the Assembly don't want it, who are we to override? That's what I say. when it suits. NFP on the reforms. He does not want any threshold reform, don't worry. There shall be no threshold increase on our watch. And the Workers' Rights Bill proposed by Albin Clavin is almost completed, which is a complete waste of time, but hey, we'll let them crack on. It distracts them from giving us grief about any such reforms. Right. Helliland is being discussed at the Helm Summit by the CSP leaders. Obviously, there's a situation going on with Helliland, which used to belong to Valgsland. Agnolia took it over by force, I believe, and now Valgsland rather want it back, and there are obviously some issues around that. And Arcasia has built a military base in Lesbia. Of course, Lesbia, I believe, are part of the ATO, aren't they? I think they're part of the ATO. Yeah, the Arcasian Treaty Organisation. So that's not a surprise there. And Narbel. In Narbel, the Communist Party and Labour Union have organised a strike against Gasom. Not good. Oops, I clicked on the meeting by mistake. Right, we've got news. Preserving national EPA stands for now. Okay, so the news are reporting on the fact that the Protection Act repeal was defeated in the Assembly. So, here we are. After a series of intense meetings with Chiara and Pascal, I decided to take some much-needed rest to recharge. Lucien and Peter dedicated significant efforts at the capital, engaging in tense negotiations with the Old Guard in order to address the pressing national security concerns and this impending emergency that we're about to declare. Meanwhile, Gus had invited me to the Gasom headquarters in Narbel, situated in Ornabel, a neighbourhood on the city outskirts. Next to it was the Demenoy Gas Reserve, a prominent natural gas source consisting of 4 large fields. As our motorcade made its way through the Ornabel district, I noted the neighbourhood's state of disrepair. The roads were bumpy and marked by potholes, while the buildings surrounded us appeared run down and dilapidated. The community had apparently endured a prolonged period of neglect. We came to a halt at the entrance gates of the facility. A sizable mural depicting the Gasom logo had been painted on a nearby wall. Adjacent to the mural, a group of individuals wearing blue work vests had assembled, holding what looked like protest signs. Sergei skillfully parked the car, bringing our journey to a smooth and elegant conclusion. Gus greeted us warmly as we stepped out of the vehicle. Good day, President Rayne. Welcome to Gasom's Narbel operations. I trust Ministers Wilder and Bennywall didn't overwhelm you with their demands. It's a relief to have a break from all of that, even just for a little while. Peter Vecton isn't the only one you can have fun with, you know. Jokes aside, you are the President, so do what you want. Except for running the country to the ground, please. Mr. President, I've been brainstorming a little something, the Grooney Rural Investment Plan. It's got the potential to breathe new life into our rural communities out in Grooney. We could consider a few things. For starters, we could give the farming business a boost with some subsidies, or we could steer towards modernising existing farms with machinery and tech. Or here's another thought. We could pour resources into developing crop breeds, tailor-made for Grooney conditions. If it works out, we could roll this out across Swordland. He kept talking as he guided me into the Gasom building. Mr. President, I get the appeal of that green bill that's been making the rounds in the Assembly. But I'm telling you, if we put the brakes on that and funnel those funds into the Grooney plan instead, we could make some real strides without spooking any potential investors. I'm intrigued by your vision, Mr. Manger. I'll seriously consider your proposal. I appreciate you hearing me out, Mr. President. I genuinely believe his plan could work wonders for our rural folks. Our talk was interrupted by a noise coming from outside the building. We looked out the nearest window. A sleek helicopter was cutting through the sky, sunlight glinting off its polished surface as it descended towards us. On it was our next appointment, Ewald Alfonso. Certainly knows how to make an entrance, doesn't he? The man loves his theatrics. Before we meet him, I wanted to bring up one more piece of assembly business. This workers' rights bill. Look, I'm all for giving hard-working folks what they deserve, but isn't it a bit hasty to push this while we're still stuck in a recession? The way I see it, short-term wins might end up costing us big time in the long run. Yes. You've got a point there, Gus. I was thinking the same thing myself. We've got to play this smart. We can't risk another economic blow. Mr. President, I'm glad you're thinking about the big picture. We've got to strike a balance to protect our economy and our workers. Timing and approach are everything. Please, come this way. Ewald and I have some exciting news to share with you. I have faith that you won't leave us hanging. Well, after your convincing arguments about the railway project, I was curious what else we could achieve. I'm flattered. Mr. President, thank you so much. I'm glad that you made the right choice, of course. I'm glad you contracted Underhaul, by the way. You will not be disappointed. It seemed like the least risky option of the three. We need safe bets now. It's a pity you only had 3 choices, to be honest. Too few large corporations own too much power. Market economics won't succeed with monopolies. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the elevator. He pushed open the door. We walked down yet another hallway, seemingly in the direction we'd just come from. Like a maze, isn't it? That's Kinali architecture for you. The hallways were lined with doors. Glass panels in them revealed workers in suits and ties, many of foreign origin, but busy in their pristine offices. A stark contrast to the blue-collar workers outside, working with machinery, transportation, and maintenance. Yes, Kinali architecture is an odd choice. Some of Gasom's global hires are from the Republic of Kinal. Once you get past the cultural differences, they're really quite gifted. Here's the elevator. You all ought to be up there already. There's a separate entrance by the helipad. We stepped into the elevator. Gus punched a code, and we began our ascent. Just remember, Alfonso is our friend. We've got the foundation for a great deal. The doors opened. Here we are, Ewald, my friend. Ewald Alfonso stood up from his chair. He had on a perfectly tailored suit that he wore as casually as pyjamas. Gus, you old devil. Takes one to know one. As promised, I brought our guest of honour. President Rayne, I hope you enjoyed seeing our facilities here. President Alfonso, it's nice to see what you have built from the inside. It's fine. Nothing compared to the Gasom HQ in Hallsort, of course. Still one of the standouts of the Maroon District. Please, have a seat. Let's talk. We sat down. Some snacks and drinks were served. Multiple Gasom yearly financial reports were scattered on the table between us. It's been a while, Mr. Rayne. Let me catch you up on my activities since I left office. I ventured to Xena, immersing myself in its vibrant culture, then traversed the captivating landscapes of the Unraken Peninsula, and finally reunited with old acquaintances in Callao. Along the way, I had the privilege of encountering remarkable individuals who have made significant contributions to their respective fields. My experiences prompted deep reflection on the essence of life. I came out of it all with 2 words resonating in my head: reputation and legacy. These 2 pillars embody the lasting impact we leave behind and the way we are remembered by others. With a cup of coffee in hand, he strolled over to the window, his gaze drawn to the expansive gas field stretching before him. Towering mountains provided a majestic backdrop. Yes. Don't we all yearn to be remembered and to make a meaningful contribution? He gazed out for a moment longer as he contemplated what I'd said, and turned back to us. I have been thinking about my own legacy and reputation, and I refuse to be remembered as a failed reformer. I put so many years of my life into this corporation, and then I left it all behind and devoted myself to serving the people of Swordland. And serve you did. Swordland would be much worse off without you. Yes. I cannot help but empathise with individuals who invest their utmost dedication into their passion and their work. That is much appreciated. I am well aware of the challenges you yourself have faced. I commend you for navigating those obstacles without causing harm to others. But I'm concerned about the future of what I have built up. The latest figures show that Gasom will have to either decrease staff and operations by 40% in 1 year or take on a crushing amount of debt. This is why we have decided to reach out to foreign investors. I do have concerns about relying too heavily on foreign investors. It's important to prioritise local ownership and maintain sovereignty over our national resources. I understand your concerns, but the future of Gasom is on the line. Rest assured we will take measures to protect our interests and ensure responsible engagement. I appreciate you coming through, Gus. Getting Rezier interested in another investment is a major feat. We've got an amazing opportunity here. The demand for gas is steadily increasing from both international partners and the Swordish state. All we have to do is ensure a consistent supply. The trouble is that right now some of our fields are operating at only half of their capacity due to resource limitations, but we have significant potential for expansion, including 2 new fields that haven't even been tapped. With the right amount of investment, we can expand resource extraction, effectively fulfill rising demand, and ensure long-term stability and profitability. There is the aforementioned interest from Rezier, but the investment could also come from Swordland itself. You do know that Rezier can't invest more than 20% unless the government permits the transaction, which can take a long time. Which is precisely why you were invited to be part of this discussion. I will remind you that I was never against the complete removal of the Energy Protection Act of 1932. In fact, I saw eye to eye with Sol about protecting our natural resources from foreign investments. But there is a balance in all things. The reality of Arcasian-style capitalism means that our national interests should absolutely be part of the discussion. Mr. Alfonso has neglected to mention that this is not an either-or proposition. Swordland can invest alongside Rezier. I don't think we need another nation to take care of our own energy company. Couldn't we keep this between Swordland and Gasom? I think there is a strong potential for a deep partnership. The government strengthens the security of gas and the company can compete and grow. It would be more costly from the government perspective, but a worthwhile endeavour. And after we draw other investors, the state can always sell shares for a higher price and make a return. The sound of sirens briefly distracted us. Through the window we saw police cars driving down the street adjacent to the Gasom zone. We directed our attention to the meeting. Ewald looked at me. Mr. President, I believe we have the potential for a mutually beneficial partnership. However, we need to align our objectives and expectations. You know, Mr. President, if we can get the government in this, it is a win-win. Not only does Gasom continue to operate and grow, but it also strengthens the state's energy security and economic power. We just need a little risk appetite, that's all. So, are you ready, Mr. President, to take on the risks that come with ensuring one of Swordland's most valuable energy companies continues to operate and grow? Are you ready to make your government stronger? Right. What kind of assurances can you provide that this will pay off in the long term, President Alfonso? Mr. President, in business there are no guarantees. But I can assure you that we at Gasom are committed to doing everything in our power to ensure this deal pays off for Swordland. I can't give you a guarantee, but I can tell you that I trust President Alfonso and I believe in this deal. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. Mr. President, have you ever considered that the future of Swordland might rest not on avoiding risks, but about embracing them? That our greatest potential might lie not in the safety of what we know, but in the uncertainty of what we might discover? I have. And I believe that embracing uncertainty is a part of leadership. We must be bold in our decisions for the future of Swordland. If the Swordish government chooses to invest, it would gain a voice in the broader company decisions, even as a minority stakeholder. The government could either liquidate its shares at a future date or continue to reap the long-term profits. A beneficial arrangement for all parties. Eward walked back over to the window. He stood there silhouetted against the vast expanse of the gas fields. After a moment he turned back to face us. His gaze was steady, the expectation clear in his eyes. The time had come to make a decision. Well, Mr. President, will Gasom and Swordland make history or not? Okay, so we're not investing with Riesia. Riesia have got ties to Rumberg. Familial ties. No trust there and no wish for foreign investment. And this investment could reap profits down the line. Or not, as the case might be, depending on how we play things. But we are going to invest the majority of the funds required. And Gus will tell Riesia to back off. Your decision shows a commitment to Swordland's energy independence. We won't let you down. That's a bold move, Mr. President, but I reckon it's the right one. Gasom's success will be Swordland's success. The worried workers will have no fears about job security thanks to state intervention. Before we dive into the celebrations, I've allocated time during this meeting for President Rayne to discuss any concerns regarding Gasom's treatment of its workers and its effect on Narbel. The Labour Union has, along with the Communist Party, rallied substantial support from Gasom workers in Narbel, advocating for improved local conditions. Alfonso nodded and looked at me. Yes, I think we need to address these concerns. They could jeopardise the administration. They're making a lot of noise. Together, we might discover solutions beneficial to both parties. Do you have a proposal in mind, Mr. President? Okay, which would be the best option here? Interesting to see. So we could directly increase the wages of the blue-collar workers. We could... contribute significantly to local charities to aid the city's recovery, or the workers get access to better housing, healthcare, and opportunities for education. I don't know, I'm going to try this option this time. A bit more direct than just bog standard charity. A good point. I see the potential for Gasom to play a larger role in supporting our workers and the community. I will personally oversee initiatives to provide private housing, health and education support for our blue-collar workers. Yes. Reassuring to hear, and I trust that you'll follow through on these commitments. Well, this is promising. Ewald's commitment to these initiatives should alleviate some of our concerns. Well, Mr. President, we're committed to... Suddenly, the meeting was interrupted. The quiet murmur of a conversation from outside the room grew louder, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. A member of the private security team entered the room, his face taut with urgency. He approached Alfonso and leaned in to whisper something in his ear. Ewald suddenly nodded, and his gaze met mine with a serious intensity. Gentlemen, it seems we have an unexpected situation outside. Some protesters from the Labour Union have blocked the main vehicular exits. Katerina Horton and Dennis Starler seem to be leading the group. It would be difficult to leave the way we came without causing trouble. Well, that is a pickle. What's our move, Ewald? I have a helicopter ready. We can leave undetected and avoid the chaos and potential danger. I am President Rayne, I'll have you know. And if I'm going to lead us into a strong, independent country, we can't have a president that slinks off in a helicopter at the first sign of trouble. No. It's time to face the crowd head on, I say. That is your prerogative, Mr. President. Following the violent events of late, I heavily recommend against facing any crowd. Mr. President, I advise you to leave your helicopter just in case. I can stay back and update the crowd on the discussions today. Sergei rushed in. Mr. President, I have discussed the situation with the Presidential Guard and the police security. They are advising us not to go out the way we came in. More police are on the way. You must make a decision, Mr. President. Everyone waited. The tense silence of the room stood in stark contrast to the buzz of the ever-growing crowd outside. And okay, we're at 46 minutes, so I think we'll cover off this situation before we end. Blue Dish Freedom Front under new leadership. So it was under the leadership of Alwyn Arg, now under his infamous... Duelin Arg was the infamous former leader. It's now Owlin Arg, his brother. There you go. Right, what else have we got? We've got the economy. Large state investment in Gasom. A resounding vote for Gasom's future. Swordland government's large-scale investment is a clarion call of confidence in our energy sector. This action underscores our government's commitment to strengthening domestic industries and preserving our energy sovereignty. Amid the cacophony of detractors, it is clear that this financial boost could be the lifeline Gasom needs to secure a stable future. A strategic leap. Yeah, dawn of prosperity, potentially. A pricey misstep, spun by the radical. And the Shaven Times. Gasom sees Swordland government's robust investment. Decisive action has been seen as a bold stroke. Well, only time will indeed tell. But for now, we have protesters to face off against. Labour strike. We've just about signed off on their getting them some extra bonus and boons here, so we can placate them with that news, surely. We are addressing the protests and leaving via car, so let's get on with it, shall we? As we stepped out of the towering front gate of the Gasom facility, I immediately became aware of how tense the situation was. Gus stood to my right, his silhouette barely distinguishable from the monolithic edifice behind us. Sergei stood to my left, his eyes scanning the crowd with the precision of a hawk. The Gasom security had drawn their weapons in anticipation, forming a bristling wall around the perimeter. My presidential guard, in stark contrast, stood tall and unflinching at the entrance, shielding us from the sea of angry workers surrounding us. The shouts of the crowd were deafening, the hostility palpable. Starler and Horton stood at the forefront, with fire in their eyes. With a deep breath, I prepared to address them. Gus extended a megaphone towards me. To the hard-working employees of Gasom, we stand with you today. Our shared goal is simple: to demand improved living and working conditions for everyone. This is not a hollow promise, but a step towards a stronger and more balanced Swordland. Speeches and more speeches from President Rayne, but what exactly was decided today? We need more than pretty words. We need substance. She's right, Mr. President. We need details. What's going to change for the workers? Now hold on a moment. President Rayne is committed to bringing about real change. His actions and decisions demonstrate this clearly, even if it does not fit your narrative. Is that so, Manger? All we've seen are decisions that favour the likes of you and Ewald Alfonso, not the common workers. It's not about narratives, Mr. Manger. It's about ensuring a fair, dignified life for the working class, something your policies have consistently failed to do. Dennis. The focus here is not on narratives or images, but on real, tangible changes. It's a process, and we are on the right track. Words, and more words. President Rayne, what the workers need are actions, not promises. Exactly, Dennis. The working class of Swordland is still waiting for these actions. What about the recent campaign finance bill, Mr. President? It's a direct attack on democracy, effectively silencing smaller parties like ours. It's clear from your lack of commitment to education that you don't fully comprehend the scope of the challenges faced by our workers' families. Your neglect of our nation's healthcare system will harm millions. Mr. President, we demand that you support the upcoming Workers' Rights Bill. The labour force of Swordland will be watching your next move closely. Furthermore, we want reform. Reduce the election threshold and change the constitution to make a more democratic and fairer nation. I understand the concerns and frustrations many of you have. Rest assured we are here, right here, facing you now and listening. And we are committed to addressing these issues in a way I see fit, of course. Quiet murmurs of discontent began to ripple through the crowd. The workers' faces seemed to turn even stonier. I could feel the tension growing. The presence of our guards did little to reassure me. Suddenly a reporter pushed through the crowd, brandishing a microphone towards me. The locals of Narbel have suffered under the impact of Gasom for years. What concrete steps is Gasom going to take for the benefit of the local community? Through hard negotiations, we have secured a commitment from Gasom to significantly better the lives of its employees. Upgraded housing, assured healthcare, and opportunities for education are now guaranteed. This is a vital step towards building a more resilient workforce. A change came over the crowd. The angry shouts were replaced with cries of disbelief, then joy. Eventually all fell silent as they waited for Dennis and Katerina to respond. If these promises materialise, it could mean a significant improvement in the lives of our comrades at Gasom. This is a start, albeit late. Let's hope it's not mere lip service. Private housing, healthcare and education? That is indeed a shift from the status quo, Mr. President. While I commend this commitment to improve the lives of our Gasom workers, we can only hope this is not just another political gambit. A group of figures emerged from the crowd, adorned in unmistakable scarlet attire. The Red Youth had arrived. The sight of them transported me back to my days among the young swords when face-offs with with those clad in crimson were frequent. I realised this was no longer a mere protest. It was a symbol of a broader, more potent struggle. The police began reorganising their ranks, adopting defensive postures. Could you shed some light on the possible deal between the Swordish government and Gasom? What role does the Kingdom of Rhesia play in this arrangement? With all due respect to the Kingdom, I believe Swordland knows what's best for Swordish companies. That's why our government is investing in Gasom alone. A surprisingly, but potentially promising decision. Mr. President, let's hope your confidence isn't misplaced. Encouraging, President Rayne, as long as your government's drive to recoup your investment doesn't take precedent over Gasom's struggling labour force. Nearby, a Gasom security officer and a presidential guard member were conversing in hushed tones. I saw them glance over the crowd, now calmer, but still restless. President Rayne, whilst the crowd appears somewhat subdued, I would advise we exercise caution. It may be best to conclude your address and proceed to the vehicle. Are you sure? Won't running away from this only make the protesters angrier? I'll remain here, Mr. President. The crowd seems calmer now, and I believe I can answer their queries and maintain the peace. You should go ahead. Mr. President, thank you for your willingness to address us. Let's continue these important conversations moving forward. You've shown courage today. We'll see if your actions match your words. Until next time. We have shown courage together. Now, we will hold you accountable to your promises. The troubles of the labourers are not over, and neither is the work of our union. We'll shake their hands. I reached out my hand, and Katerina shook it with a smile. Dennis followed suit. Almost immediately, the remaining tension in the crowd dissipated. A few workers nearby broke into scattered applause. Initially hesitant clapping grew louder, and jubilant cheers and whistles filled the air. I saw the Red Youth members standing at the edge of the crowd with their arms folded, a hint of approval in their eyes. As I readied myself to leave, I turned back to Katerina and Dennis a last time. I don't want to see some of the changes aren't happening. For example, the situation with the workers' rights. We're not going to sign that. So we don't want to promise something and then feel like we're going back on it. So yeah, I understand your frustrations and the urge to voice your concerns. However, let's keep our discourse respectful and constructive. Together, we can ensure a prosperous future for Swordland. The reporter jumped in. Can you clarify the current status of your personal relationship with you? No more questions, please. Mr. President, if you could please proceed to the vehicle. Sergei opened the door of the car and I lowered myself into the seat. The door closed behind me with a thud, sealing off the external noise. The crowd began to disperse, the individuals breaking away to let our convoy through. The guards took their position, nonetheless, forming a human barrier around the vehicle. The engine purred to life, and we began to move. I'm glad we are safely on our way, Mr. President. A little excitement to keep us on our toes, wasn't it? That's one way to look at it, Mr. President. Keeps the job interesting, to say the least. The echoing voices of the protesters gradually subsided as we retreated from the scene and left Narbel behind. Well, look at that. Wasn't that something? So out of all the playthroughs that I've done, and I've done one off camera, and I've done one on camera, and this is my third playthrough now, that was the best that conversation has ever gone. Looks like we've pulled it out of the hat there somehow. But right, we're just short of the hour mark, but I say the codeine has kicked in. I don't feel drowsy or anything, but it's making me feel a bit sickly. So yeah, I'm going to go get some water and take my lie down. But in the next session, oh, this is the Green Act. No, can't afford it. Sorry about that. So sorry. Preparation for the emergency decree. Oh, now this is new. Of course, in our first playthrough, we didn't go down this line, so this is a completely new conversation that we're going to have, so intrigued to see how this one goes. So in the next session, I will read the newspapers. Well, I'll go through the highlights, I'll read them off camera to save a bit of time, and then we'll crack straight on with preparing for this emergency decree. Until then, I'll see you soon.